Good morning. It is
Mouth of the alligator.
Yeah, I love that. It is Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. Do you know where your children are?
Do you know where your kids are?
That's right. That's what
They're
Hey,
not with us.
Rob Browne, Brenden Martin got a great show in store for you today. Take a picture with your cellular phone of the QR code. We're live on X, Facebook, and YouTube. We got a great channel here with 8 shows.
We're on your station, your daddy's station, your mom's station. We're on everyone's station.
And share the show and also engage with us, people. We love your comments, your questions. Engage. Tell us where you're from. I love that stuff, man. Look, we got Jordan Davis Hill, Georgia 24/7 Sports. We've got Jake Wimberly, the Matrix, the numbers man on college football from Jackson, Mississippi, and ESPN 105.9. And Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, be on here with us as well. Rodney Orr, still on assignment. He'll be back probably next week, the first week of July. Lot to cover. Best 60 minutes on the SEC. Let's go ahead and
we're hot.
Rolling. Hey, Jordan, talking to you before the show. There's a lot of stuff happening. Georgia football recruiting is hot. I think yesterday it was 98 in Memphis. Then we had an afternoon shower, and I walked into a store called Wild Birds Unlimited to get something. It was the condensation you couldn't see inside the store. But let's talk about Georgia recruiting and whatever is on your mind. And as always, thanks for sharing your time with our audience.
Definitely appreciate you guys having me on. And man, if we are going to take 1 week out of the summer to talk about Georgia recruiting, this is probably the week. They started it off on Sunday. They got Darius Tootle, flipped him from Auburn. We were talking about that before we started recording. Monday, they get Kamari Brooks, an edge rusher that was down to Georgia and Alabama, a guy that's basically in Georgia's backyard at North Oconee, Oconee County, right beside Athens, Clark County. And it continues today and several other days. We're watching Corey Howard, defensive lineman from Valdosta. I think he is announcing at 7:30 Eastern tonight, 7 or 7:30 Eastern on Tuesday night. And then Craig Dandridge is Thursday, I think. And Jay Lamar, a running back that they really want out of Colquitt County, he is on Wednesday. So this has a chance to be a spectacular week for Georgia. Right now, I think they got 19 commits, number 2 class in the country, but this is the week. And I encourage folks, my buddy Benjamin Wolk covers recruiting for us, and he told everybody on Sunday, he said, get ready, guys. This is going to be a really good week for Georgia recruiting. And I hope everybody who's listening, any of the Georgia fans, are following along with us because this is a very big week for Georgia.
So that's on the 24/7 y'all's site, all that recruiting stuff. It's happening fast. Real quick before we go to another topic, you think that there was a little bit of waiting on the part of Georgia and a lot of other schools to see what the House settlement would be before they made any kind of a promise on an NIL deal? But maybe not, because I think Georgia's class with 19 commitments tells me that's not a good theory.
I think that they had a plan in place and that they were pretty confident about what it would look like. And, we talked to Georgia's athletic director, Josh Brooks, a couple weeks before the settlement was approved. Basically, one of the questions I asked him is, do you guys have a plan if this is not approved by July 1, which was when, things would effectively go into place? And he said, yeah, we have a plan B, essentially, is what he said. So I think they were ready. I think they understood that more than likely that settlement was going to be approved. And we've seen that it has been, although there's a few lawsuits surrounding it. So I think Georgia understood the lay of the land, and I think they've done a good job navigating it. I give a lot of credit to a lot of these coaches, and then, the people in their personnel department, any GMs that they have, of navigating this. This is a whole new world. There's a whole lot of new questions and a lot of situations they've never faced before. And I can just speak to what I know on the Georgia front. I think they have done a very good job navigating it to this point. And, you have a top 2 class among everything going on in the sport. I think you're sitting pretty about this time of year.
And Georgia doesn't have a GM. The face of Georgia football is the man from Bainbridge, Kirby Smart. And that's – maybe they don't need one.
And my thing is, and Kirby's made this point too, there may not be someone when you look at their athletic directory there's not someone listed as a general manager, but they've got 2, 3, 4 different people who do the responsibilities what a general manager would do. So I think Kirby understands that titles don't mean a whole lot. He's been asked about it a couple different times this summer, and he's talked about, within different organizations, that general manager is asked to do different things. He point blank asked one of the reporters at spring meetings, what does a general manager do in your mind?
Yeah.
And the person replied, I think it depends on the organization. And he said, that's exactly right. That's why, we don't think we have to have a general manager. There's plenty of people within the program that you could get, if you wrote out the responsibilities, they could point to, well, so-and-so does this or so-and-so does that. Georgia doesn't feel the need to have a general manager. And you just look at the results and the roster build in the last few years, it's kind of hard to argue that they do need one with how successful they've been.
Yeah. Got a text from the Burgermeister, Paul Wickenheiser, man, dog for life, I can assure you. Lives out in Reno, Nevada, but keeps up with the dogs, loves what you do. Said defensive line, he talked about, has been a mainstay for Georgia, just dominant under Kirby Smart. How deep are they this year? Talk about some newcomers that nobody knows about.
Yeah, I think that's the key to when you look at Georgia's best defenses, when they won back-to-back titles, it was the defensive line. And those, I think the first year they won it, I think they were first in rushing defense. And then when they went back-to-back, I think they finished third in the nation in rushing defense. It starts with the defensive line. The guys that I think are sort of the leaders of that group, Christian Miller, be the defensive tackle. Jordan Hall, a former 5-star from Jacksonville, I think he'll be your nose tackle. But I'm kind of more intrigued by some of the guys who may not necessarily start. Looking at Joseph Jonah Ajonye, a guy that was a 5-star coming out of Texas. He didn't play much last year because he got hurt. He got some run early in the season, gets hurt before they play Texas in the regular season, wound up having to have surgery. Look at a guy like Xavier McLeod, a guy they got from South Carolina before last season. I thought every time he was on the field last season, he flashed, but he wasn't a starter. So see if he plays more. And then the big guy, the name that I think is the most intriguing, as far as the guys not starting, is Elijah Griffin. 5-star from Savannah. He looks like the next coming of a Georgia star on the defensive line, but he's going to be a true freshman. How does he handle that transition? How much can he play early on? I think even if he just gets in a rotational role, if he's in there to spell some guys and keep the entire line fresh, I think that will serve Georgia really, really well. I think that'll be good news for them.
Travion Walker was out of Upson Lee over there on the Flint River. Did many a story on the Flint River. It's a beautiful river, by the way. Thomaston, Georgia. Number 1 pick, went to Jacksonville a couple of years ago. 6'4", 275. And I see a pattern similar to what Alabama had. Quinnen Williams out of Winona High School there in Birmingham, kind of out there in the weeds for a few years, comes in and starts 9 or 10 games. He's the number 3 pick in the draft. That's exactly what's happening at Georgia now. From what you just described, that's scary.
Yeah, I mean, and I think when you look at last year, I think that defensive line production was not what we've grown accustomed to. And, these last couple lines, you're asking them, you're looking for a guy to be that Jalen Walker, but Jalen Walkers don't grow on trees. It's very hard to find those guys. And I think they were fine. They were pretty good, but they were not the dominant force they've been. I don't know if they can be that dominant force again, but I really like this collection of defensive linemen. And, I always go back to the Peach Bowl when they played Ohio State and, Georgia wins that game. But what I'm struck by looking back, I swear it felt like they were rotating defensive linemen like it was a hockey shift. I mean, they were just running guys in and out because they counted on those guys that weren't starters to come in and play meaningful snaps and there not to be a significant drop-off. I think this line is capable of doing that. Yeah. But thinking that and knowing that are two different things, and it makes me excited to see what that group can do when we get the season started.
Well, you take a look at a lot of people think it's going to be Georgia-Texas rematch. Georgia won them both last year. Clearly, line of scrimmage. They're more rugged, as Cole Kubelik says. They're just tougher. With that being said, let's flip to the offensive line. Texas has to replace 4 starters. That's a big deal. People act like, try moving when you move literally from one house to the other. It's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of stuff happens. But let's talk about the offensive line and also the tight end position, because Georgia has made that a rock star position in Athens.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could say that offensive line is Georgia's biggest question. They lost 4 starters from last year, just like Texas. And the thing with Georgia, the one guy coming back, they're putting him in a different position. Ernest Green was the left tackle. Looks like he's going to be playing right tackle with Monroe Freeling, a junior coming up, probably going to be the left tackle. So I'm fascinated to see what this offensive line can do. You look at the Georgia offense last year, there were some disappointing pieces all around. And I think you can make the case. I think a lot of people would say Carson Beck, but offensive line, I think, might have been the most disappointing. They had 3 guys that wound up getting drafted, and that line just didn't live up to expectations. They could not run the ball. Georgia was 15th in the SEC in rushing yards per game. Like, that's just unheard of. Never happened in the Kirby Smart era. I go out on a limb and say, that has not happened at least since the 90s. This line has to prove itself. I feel pretty good about the interior. Drew Bobo going to be the center. Probably looking at Micah Morris at left guard, Daniel Calhoun at right guard. But, this group has to go out there and prove it. They got to protect Gunnar Stockton. I really like the talent they put around Gunnar, the skill players, the playmakers. But they got to give him time. And if that line struggles, that's going to be a really that'll be a big issue in this offense, being able to produce like they want it to.
Yeah, and I think a key stat to follow is how many offensive linemen leave at the end of the spring for the portal window in April or whatever, the stolen reps that Cole Kubelik likes to talk about, because you want them 2 years to develop an offensive lineman. All right, quick question here from Blind Squirrel Sports. I love this guy's name. Jordan, who replaces the wide receiver that Miami just flipped away from Georgia's 26 class. I'm sure there's a list of players wanting that
That's
spot.
the same guy that Florida feels like they didn't get either and went to Miami.
I'm not sure. Vance Spafford, he's out in California. It seemed like it was Miami and Washington, but I don't think this caught Georgia by surprise. We've been talking about it on our recruiting podcast and projecting that, he would flip. I was kind of watching Washington just because he's a West Coast guy, but the guy I would watch as a result of this is Terrius Favors. He's a wide receiver from Carver in Atlanta. And the reason I point him out, Vance Spafford is not a big receiver. I think he was looked at as being a slot receiver if he came to Georgia, if he stuck with Georgia. And you look at Terrius Favors, 5'10", 160, not the biggest guy, but he's impressed. And right now he's a Boise State commit, and Georgia's been around. And I think Terrius Favors has been very honest. I mentioned Ben Wolk earlier. When he talked to Ben a few weeks ago, he was like, look, Georgia's sort of in this holding pattern right now with the receivers they have. And, that Terrius kind of understood that right now he's not part of the plans. But that was before Vance Spafford flipped to Miami. So Terrius Favors is the guy I'm watching. In-state kid, Carver, Atlanta. He makes a lot of sense for me. I'll be interested to see if Georgia circles back with him and says, that spot's open now, and we'd like you to fill it.
Yeah, and I think December, again, there's going to be a lot of – I think some schools are – changing their strategy. They're saving up their money so they've got more to spend. But I like having momentum. If you don't, Georgia's got 18, 19, whatever, top 3 class in the country. I'd rather have that. You can sleep better at night. All right, so a couple of more things. With Georgia this year, let's compare this Georgia team to 5 years ago. Kirby just seems like he's finding more excuses to win. When you don't think they're going to do it, they do it. You just mentioned the offensive line last year. Even without a running game, which is unheard of up in the Classic City, 15th out of 16, you go on the road and you dominate Texas, and you beat them again when your quarterback gets banged up. That says a lot about the culture of toughness that Kirby has.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see this team, and it's, a product of what they've done the last few years, and something that I'm interested this year, and we're only going to know it once we get into the season. I think in the last couple of years, Kirby's been a little bit more willing to go into the transfer portal. That 2022 team, they didn't take anybody. Now, Kirby had made the point, just because we didn't take anybody doesn't mean we didn't want anybody. There were a few guys they went out and targeted, and it just didn't work out. Those guys went elsewhere. But, I think about last season, they went and got several receivers, Colby Young, London Humphreys. This offseason, they go get 2 more receivers. They get Noah Thomas, they get Zachariah Branch, and then they load up and get 3 defensive backs, Adrian Maddox, Jaden Harris, Zion Branch, Zachariah's brother. I think that Kirby's kind of found that sweet spot in what he wants to do with the portal, on top of what they've done in recruiting. I mean, because I think a big part of why there are years where Georgia is not as active in the portal is because they feel good about what they got on the roster. And, basically, Kirby's basically said in the past, we're not going to take somebody just to take somebody. And they've been very good at seeing what their weaknesses are and then going into definitely that, December, January window and trying to address them. So I just think that they've got a good feel for roster building in the portal era. And time again, we go into those windows and, I'll usually have a list of probably 10 or 15 guys that I'm watching on Georgia's roster and say, well, these guys may leave. More often than not, it's not as many as I expect because they convince those guys to buy in to stay around and try to fight for a starting role. And, it's going to work out well for a guy like Ja'Cory Thomas. Right now, I think would be one of the starting safeties. He's a guy that I've, admittedly watched to see if he would transfer because he's about to be a senior. But Georgia has convinced him, hey, just stay put. You got a chance to start. You can compete for this job. And that's paid off to him at least this point in the offseason.
I mean, and you look at it from a player's perspective, if you see a bunch of guys coming in the portal, it's not really a vote of confidence to you. But you could also say, that's motivating me to work harder. It's like you see people at work, they're bringing in other people out in the open to interview for your position. You got a choice to make. But I think Kirby says, I like our guys. And maybe 5 or 6 guys. But he's always said, if they're not the perfect fit, I don't want them.
Yeah, and a lot of the time they want to go get guys in the portal that they recruited in high school just because they have those relationships. And more than that, they know the character of the kids, that they know what exactly they're getting into. Now, I think that was a little harder this offseason. I don't know how many of those guys they recruited back in high school, but I think it's a good rule of thumb, and I understand where Kirby's coming from. You kind of want to have that prior relationship so you know what exactly you're looking at, and yeah.
Well, and then one last thing, the number 37 drops last year. You talked about that and you chronicled, you're really good with these numbers, but that was the most drops by anybody. The receiving core, has there been an upgrade in your opinion? It sounds like it has been upgraded a lot.
I think it's the most significant upgrade. I mean, I think they've basically flipped that room because they got Zachariah Branch. I think Zachariah is going to lead Georgia in receiving this year. I think he's got a chance to be a really good receiver. You bring back Dylan Bell, you bring back Colby Young, you add Noah Thomas, who I think has kind of been overshadowed by Zachariah Branch, but Noah led Texas A&M in receiving last year. He's a big body that I think they're going to throw to quite a bit. Then you sign 5 guys out of high school. Now, how much those guys are going to play, I'm not sure. But, C.J. Wiley, Landon Roldan, Talon Taylor, a couple other guys that they've added. I mean, the room looks completely different. And I think that room, especially a guy like Dylan Bell who's coming back as part of that room, I think they got a lot to prove because, the receivers just could not be counted on last year. And I think that affected how Carson Beck played at times. So I really like the efforts they made. I love the transfer additions. If there's one guy you watch for Georgia in the passing game, I think it's Zachariah Branch. But I think this is a very deep room, and I think it's one that is going to be very productive this season.
Jordan, you are always prepared. I mean, I'd take you to the Supreme Court with me if you were a lawyer. But thanks always. Let people know how they can
follow you. It's like a mic drop when he comes in here.
It really is. I mean,
he's like vomits all this information that's awesome, and then he's like, I'm out.
And you're laid back, man. You're kind of Cool Hand Luke about this stuff, but always
he loves that Cool Hand Luke reference. I was just thinking about the eggs.
We'll have to get you some glasses like Cool Hand Luke. But thanks always for your time. But again, people need to be following you.
I appreciate that. Dogs247.com, on Twitter at Jordan Davis Hill, on Twitter at Dogs247. I'll say it again, 50% off sale in the month of June. And I promise, if you care at all about Georgia recruiting, get on this week, because it's got a chance to be a very, very big week for Georgia. And based on what our guy Ben Wolk is saying, it is going to be a big week for Georgia.
Hit that QR code down there, and they'll take you right there to the website he's talking about, folks. And then you can find it in the chat. Jordan, thank you so much, buddy. Thanks for retweeting. Right. I appreciate it.
See you in Atlanta, man.
All right.
Yeah, we always appreciate the retweets. We'll do it for you, too. Jake Wimberly, JW. Oh, yes. Man, you remember Live and Let Die, the James Bond movie, when that guy went over the dang bayou in that boat, and they got down there, and it was chaos, and Sheriff JW came out there, and James Bond was there, and he said, now, JW, he's a secret agent. And he goes, on whose side? JW, Jake Wimberly, one of the smartest guys, civil engineer extraordinaire. I don't know if you got into the discipline of structural engineering, but the matrix and the numbers that you use for college football, you put all this complex stuff in the vernacular, it says a lot about the duality of man.
Wow. Jesus, dude. You just went from freaking James Bond to what? What? Hi, Jake.
No, sorry. Hey,
Rob, let's say hi to our guest. Hi, Jake. How are you?
Jake, how are you?
Good to see you, Jake. How are you?
You're good, guys.
Did you have James Bond on your bingo card this morning? Because I did not.
Yes. Not today.
And duality and the whole duality of man.
I did not on that either.
Okay. Well, welcome to the show, buddy.
Glad to be here.
Hey, listen, man. I'll tell you have an awesome show, 3 to 6, Monday through Friday, ESPN 105.9, the afternoon drive in Jackson, Mississippi. I want to hear your numbers, man, because you put out so much stuff and you're so accurate and close to it or right on the money every year. There's a lot of chaos going on, but let's talk about these Lindy's and Athlons, different football magazines. Everybody get your microscopes and magnifying glasses ready for Phil Steele's copy to come out. But I want to know who your top teams are and why.
Top teams, we're talking SEC, we're talking in the country.
SEC and nationally.
Well, first, let's go top. What, you want to go top 10 and then do SEC?
Yeah, let's do top 10 first and then SEC.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we go top 10, and look, here's the thing. And the way I always say, are we looking at, a power ranking, or are we looking at a projected finish? Because all of that does matter. And how you quantify, what we see today and what we think today, is that what's going to be at the end of the year once you run schedules and things of that nature. So, and apologies, I could have sent you guys this stuff prior to, but if we're looking at my top 10 teams in the country, power rankings, regardless of conference, I have Texas number 1. And surprise, I mean, most people's going to have Texas number 1. But when you look at what Texas has coming back, you look at the quarterback situation potentially, you look at the coaching staff, you look at what they did offensively and defensively last year. Their scoring efficiency numbers were very, very good. Inside the top 10 of the country, Texas number 1. This may surprise people. LSU number 2 in the country. Number 2 in the power rankings. Doesn't mean they're the number 2. That I think they're going to finish number 2. I have them number 2 in the power rankings. Garrett Nussmeier comes back. He's one of the leads as far as Vegas is concerned, as the Heisman Trophy. You look at some of the talent that they have. You look at the way they work the transfer portal. You look at their coaching staff. They hit right under Texas. Georgia number 3, and there's not even a dime's worth of difference between Georgia and LSU as far as the numbers are concerned. Georgia sits at number 3. Number 4, Oregon. Number 5, Ohio State. Number 6, the University of Miami. Number 7, Clemson, and they're right there together. Number 8, Penn State. Alabama, and then Ole Miss. That's 9 and 10.
Wow. You've got Ole Miss up there pretty high. In particular, and Yancy Porter will be on in a few minutes, like to get cool because he does Rebel Yell Hotline, follows Ole Miss really closely. Man, this Austin Simmons is really an intriguing story. And just his baseball abilities at 19, already graduated, probably working on a master's now. Also, you got Penn State in there. What is it going to take? Penn State, got in the playoffs last year. James Franklin's record against, Ohio State and Michigan, that's got to get better. But Texas 1, LSU 2, Alabama in there at 9th. I'll throw this at you. Alabama, Ty Simpson, Keelan Russell's coming in, quarterback, the true freshman that was going to SMU until he was going to Alabama. With Ryan Grubb coming into Alabama, you could make a case for them higher. Yeah.
You could, but depending on how good the quarterback play is. First off, you asked about Penn State.
Yeah.
What is it going to take for Penn State to take that next step? Penn State has checked every box except one. And I'll tell you that one in just a second. Coaching, I think they've checked it with James Franklin and the staff. They bring over a defensive coordinator from Ohio State who was a national championship coordinator last year. He's over at Penn State this year. Quarterback Drew Aller, he's good enough to win you a championship. He'll play in the National Football League. He'll be a top, round, 2-3 round pick. We'll see where he lands up, but he's going to be one of the better quarterbacks. Running backs, they have arguably the best running back room in the country. Defensively, they're going to always play really good. What it comes down to Penn State is their wide receiver room. And there is a metric that I use called impact ball catcher metric. And what that means, and that's a fancy way of saying, hey, how good is your dudes on the outside? How good is your guys that catch the football? Because that is a big, big deal. Look, there was a stat that came out yesterday. Last year in the NFL, for the first time ever, 4 rookies went over 1,000 yards at wide receiver. That's never happened before. The wide receiver position is as important, if not more important, than your running backs were 25 years ago. Penn State does not have that. For whatever reason, that wide receiver room has been lethargic for James Franklin over the last several years. If you don't believe it, go look at the games you referenced. Anytime they played Ohio State, when they played Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl. Now, they were able to score some points against Oregon in the Big Ten championship last year, but every big game they have faltered in the passing game, and they can't keep up. If they can find some guys, if some of these guys in the transfer portal can evolve into those guys, then they're going to be really tough to handle. But until that happens, they're the best team win in the country. You referenced Alabama. I think it's going to determine on how good these quarterbacks really are.
Yeah.
Ryan Grubb coming back definitely really helps. But they're going to have a ton of talent to work with, one of the better wide receiver rooms in the SEC. They're going to be able to run the football. They got a young man, from Meridian, Mississippi. And his name escapes, last name Hill. Anyway, saw him play in high school. He's making a lot of buzz. If the quarterback situation is right in Alabama, they're going to be really tough.
Yeah. And you look to a program like Texas, replacing 4 starters on the offensive line. And the 2 biggest tests against the toughest opponent, they played them twice, was Georgia last year, and they failed both times. There was one time, I think against Kentucky last year, Texas really ran the ball down somebody's throat. I think 292 yards, or maybe 256. You just don't see that very often. Is Texas tough enough? We all know about Arch Manning. If his last name was Finkelstein, I don't know if we'd, consider him the leading candidate for the Heisman Trophy. But that being said, is Texas last year, they've been to the semis 2 years in a row. What's not working for them to get over the top? Was Quinn Ewers just not the guy?
I think I think Quinn Ewers was a nice college quarterback. We'll see what he does, with the Miami Dolphins. Let's go defensively first. I mean, defensively, Texas had the number 1 defensive scoring efficiency team in the country.
Yeah.
They were as good as anybody defensively. They only gave up 15 points a game. And as a matter of fact, their highest defensive output was that Georgia loss, back in October of last year, October 19th. They, gave up 30 points to Georgia. Offensively is they were a little lethargic in some areas. As a team, they garnered just over 4 yards per carry. You talk about that running attack. They've got some guys that can play. They've got a sophomore back who'll be a junior who was a 1,000-yard back. This is a team, I think, offensively that just struggled at times. And, you have to ask yourself, where was that at? They were 15th in the country offensively in scoring efficiency. That's right at the base of the numbers, like the back end of where I want to see a team on offensive scoring efficiency for a national championship type team. Yeah. They need to move that thing inside the top 10. I think Arch Manning will allow them to do that. And one of the things that Arch Manning is going to give you, and we saw just a glimpse of this last year that Quinn Ewers could not, is his ability to at least get you a first down with his feet. He is a guy that can get out and run it a little bit. He's not a guy that's going to, he's not going to be Lenore Sellers, but he's good enough to get you a first down. And, I think that's the thing, is that run game has to continue to evolve.
Yeah. All right, let's look at the SEC. Let's go through your top teams there because, I mean, there are a lot of the same names in that top 10.
Yeah, if you look at the SEC, if I give you my top 10, so to speak, in the SEC, I'm going Texas number 1, Georgia. This will be final rankings here. Okay. Georgia 2, LSU 3, Texas A&M 4, Tennessee 5, Oklahoma 6, Auburn 7, Ole Miss 8, Alabama 9, and South Carolina number 10. But there's a caveat on that.
Yeah.
There is a log jam between Texas A&M all the way down to South Carolina, and they're separated by about a game and a half.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about Texas A&M. Second year from Mike Elko. They had the greatest recruiting class in the history of recruiting classes 3 or 4 years ago. And it didn't take long for most of those guys to leave. Yet they still have a lot of talent. They got Marcel Reed at quarterback out of MBA in Nashville. Fast guy. Is he a good enough pocket guy, passer to throw, if they need to, 30 balls downfield? Can he win on the road in hostile environments with his arm?
Well, I don't think we know enough about him yet, to make that assumption. If you look at him, I mean, he had spot time early. He got time late. He went on the road in a loss to Auburn last year. He put up 297 yards and a 2-point loss, 43-41. Yeah. Against, Southern Cal. He put up, basically right at the same numbers, just right under 300. So, the thing about him is we've just got to see more of it. I know this, if you talk with people down there, they believe in him, but here's the caveat. They've believed in a lot of them that have come through there. You look at what's going on at Georgia Tech with their quarterback. He comes from Texas A&M, and they were right to believe in him because he is doing big things over there. So I think he's definitely got potential, but again, we've got to see it. And I said this yesterday, oddly, on my show is, which one of these quarterbacks, there's a lot of quarterbacks that we just don't know a lot about. We kind of know a lot about DJ Lag, or a little bit about DJ Lagway. We haven't seen him, in what we want to see. We know what Lenore Sellers is. We know what Garrett Nussmeier is. But which one of these quarterbacks is going to, in the Southeastern Conference, be that household name come November that we really didn't think would be that household name, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, and that A&M game against Auburn last year, it says a lot about where the Auburn football program is, that they stormed the field last year when they beat A&M, who won 8 games or what have you. But Reed he's fast as lightning. Let's bring in Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. Yancy got Jake Wimberly from the bold new city, Jackson, Mississippi, on here talking SEC power rankings and all like that. Sure. Where did you have Ole Miss in your top 10, Jake?
Morning, Yancy. How are you?
Good morning. How about you, Jake?
Man, I'm hanging in there. I've got Ole Miss at 8th, but here's the deal. I've got them 8-4, and I've got them in a logjam with Oklahoma, Auburn, Tennessee, and South Carolina. So, I mean, you take those 4 teams, you flip one game, they win 9. I mean, you flip 2, they win 10. So, we're going to have, I think, a hold on to your chair, hold on to your butt kind of October and November in the SEC.
Yeah. Yancy, hop into that. What a compelling story, narrative going into the log jam. And it's in 9 this year could get you in the playoffs. It certainly will when we go to 16.
Yeah, I just think when you are replacing 75% of your rotation, there's no way to know. I don't know where Ole Miss is going to fall in the SEC right now. That's, I got a better chance of winning the lotto than that. It's really is an unknown. I like where they stand on the front 7 defensively. I like their offensive skill positions. I think Austin Simmons is going to be one of the elite quarterbacks in the country. How long it takes him to get there, I don't know. So it's a lot of question marks.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I think about the guy in front of me with the scratch-offs in a convenience store when you're trying to get out of there in a rush. Yeah, good luck. You're going to win $1. But all right, Jake, along the lines of what he just said, flipping these cultures, that's a hard thing to do if you've got 35 or 40 people. I don't know anybody doing a better job of that than Lane Kiffin. I mean, what's the secret sauce on that? And then, he just keeps doing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Yancy's up there around that program. I am not. I'm a couple hours away, but I tell you what you see, even here in this state is, the track record that he run. It looks like he runs that program kind of like an NFL franchise, right? And some of these coaches in the transfer portal era are a lot of them are doing it. I think Dan Lanning is doing that. I think Mario Cristobal is doing that. Lane Kiffin's doing that. I think what they're doing at SMU, a lot of similarities in these coaches and the way. Excuse me, Deion Sanders, at Colorado, they're running these transfer portal heavy programs, and they're doing a heck of a job doing it. So, one of the things we do know, and Yancy's right. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns, but there's a lot of unknowns about a lot of teams. So what we know is track record, and Lane Kiffin has a track record of building rosters, developing quarterbacks, and scoring points. And since Pete Golding has been there, the defense has been really, really good. So if the track record, follows. Rob, as you talk about hunting dogs a lot of times, you're going to breed a pretty good hunting dog.
Yeah. All right. I was watching one of those missing persons shows, Yancy, on TV, and I saw Ulysses Bentley IV's name on there. I mean, he comes last year. We didn't see him until the LSU game, and he goes 50 or 60 yards up the gut for a touchdown. Does anyone know what he did last year? Did he not turn in his homework? Did he I mean, what happened with that one? And talk about that running back room and having the two of y'all together. This is really cool because, I live in Memphis and my relatives are all from the Delta. This is pretty special. Two Mississippi guys on the same show. This is pretty awesome. But Yancy, let's go ahead and get into that.
I think when Lane Kiffin's career is over, and that's a long, long ways off, 20, 30 years from now, that will be probably the number one question that everybody's want to know the truth serum on that, right? The most puzzling coaching decision and move of the Kiffin career is it made no sense. It still doesn't. And we actually had a 30-minute debate about this just the other night with some friends of mine. So I don't know. I really don't. He helps, beat Georgia. They're back on track, and all they got to do is win the last couple games, make the playoffs. And the very next game, I think he rushed for maybe 80 yards and a couple touchdowns. And then that's very next game, he doesn't even get a carry, and they bring on a four-string kick returner as the running back against Florida, at Florida. On top of that, it made no sense, and nobody will ever know. I don't think you'll know that until Lane retires. But Jake makes a lot of great points. You can do predictability, and Lane. I really think, in my gut, I think 8-4 is the floor for this Ole Miss team. I think when you have the front seven they'll have on defense with the weapons they have, and they feel like they got two legitimate SEC backs that can really do a lot of damage, and that doesn't even Logan Diggs is a guy that's coming off an injury. He's not included in that mix, but I think he will be. I think the running game is going to give them a lot more balance on offense. We'll see how the offensive line holds up. That's a big question mark to me, along with the secondary.
Yeah, look, got two smart guys here, so I'm going to take advantage of this brain power. Jake, looking and listening to what he just said about Ole Miss, you look at Mississippi State, you've got Jeff Lebby. He knows the quarterback position really well. It's like Lane Kiffin. People call him that corny term, quarterback whisperers. I just think they're highly effective at what they do. What do you see happening with Mississippi State this season in year two? Because the defense, let's say they're 40% better than last year. What does that translate to?
40% better. Well, let's see. What did they give up last year? And, last year was a deal where that defense was as bad as you could argue that has been in this century. I mean, seriously, you got to go all the way back to, Sylvester Croom. You got to go all the way back to the end of Jackie Sherrill. That defense gave up roughly, 34 points. Half of that is 16. So, I mean, if you got 40% better, you're sitting in the high 20s is where you're at, giving up, points. That would be a really big improvement. But look, this team, there's a lot of question marks. I mean, that defense couldn't stop anybody last year. I don't know that defense would have stopped Tupelo High School last year. And I'm being serious. It was that bad. Yeah. So, you do a full changeover defensively. at least they look the part. So we'll see how they play. Offensively, they're going to have to score points if they're going to be in some of these games. Blake Shapen's got to stay healthy. I know they feel pretty good about the receivers that they have. They feel pretty good about the running backs that they have. Offensive line is still a question. It was a question coming out of spring. I know that they, picked up a couple guys in the transfer portal. But this is still a long, long road for Mississippi State. It's a long road for Jeff Lebby. If they can get to 5 wins this year, I think that is, somewhat of a just kind of a salute to them. Hey, we're making progress. I don't see 6 being on the table. It would have to be some instances where they're much better than we think, or some teams are not as good. But the schedule is brutal for Mississippi State. They have to play Georgia. They have to play, and I know everybody in the SEC plays tough schedules, but they do play Georgia, Texas. They play Florida. They play Tennessee. So they play some of the better ones. Ole Miss in the conference and the country. So it's still a long, long work in progress for Mississippi State. You just want to see them competitive. Yeah. And you don't want to be in a situation where you were last year, where God forbid you're losing to Northern Illinois. You better take Southern Miss serious week 1, because Charles Huff has basically brought Marshall, a very good Marshall team, to Hattiesburg. There's a lot of question marks, and they're going to have to roll it out every week and play 4 quarters to be competitive.
That's what I love. Every one of these games has a storyline, and thank you for bringing that up about a very good Marshall team now is in Hattiesburg, the hub city. By the way, one of the hottest cities, humidity in that city. It's like checking the oven. How much longer does that hot roast have to go? You're like, it's brutal. All right. So I got to ask you this, Yancy. Yeah. Last year in mid-November, it was right before duck season started, man. We were that Georgia at Ole Miss. That was Uncle Jed would call it a shindig. That was a coming out party for Ole Miss. And then you wonder, how the hell did you lose to Kentucky on the last play? How did you never trail against LSU until the last play? And then you went on the road to Florida. You just caught an ascending Florida team that had confidence like they hadn't had all year. Well, November 15th, the Gators come to the Vault. That is going to be holy shnikes, Austin Simmons versus DJ Lagway, assuming they're both healthy and standing upright. Jake, hopefully will be back here. Here he is. But that game, November 15th, Florida at Ole Miss, talk about the significance based on, June 24th and how big it's going to be.
Well, you hope, in Ole Miss's sake, it's going to be really big, right? You want it to still be about the playoffs, needed to win to get into the playoffs. And personally, for Lane, with how that went down last year, I would imagine they'll be game planning for them for a few weeks. So I think, I've said it on record. I think Florida is the dark horse of the SEC this year coming up. I'm a big believer in their defense and their quarterback. I think they're doing a really nice job on the recruiting trail. I think they're going to have a really, really good year this year. But I've got a gut feeling, particularly for those 3 schools you just named right there, that if Ole Miss loses, they're going to get their best shot.
Yeah. It will be an incredible environment. Jake, love that line in that Willie Nelson song. Stay all night, stay a little longer, take off your coat, throw it in the corner, dance a little longer. Love it when you can stay on extra, and having the 2 of y'all together. Again, we got about 10 minutes to go, about 15 minutes to go. I want to start asking both of y'all rapid fire questions. Y'all know college football really well. All these magazines are coming out. I still get that same feeling I did, when I first started reading these things. You're holding something in your hand. You're looking at these rankings, and then you can tap in, like on this show, to you, Jake, and compare what they're saying to what you're saying. With the portal, that being said, with the portal and all the transfers around, we still have a pretty damn good idea of what the roster looks like right now. I don't see that hasn't changed that much, has it?
Are you referencing as far as
for the fall? Yeah, because you pretty much know who your roster is now. There's no more chances for escape.
Oh, correct. Yeah, at least today you do. There's a lot, and look, you can't hold fans accountable to knowing every person that comes in and out of their roster. That's why you go to somebody like Yancy for Ole Miss, or you go to other people for other teams, is because they're the guys that are keeping up with those changes. And even at that, I mean, there's a lot of unknowns. But yeah, I mean, we know who the rosters are, but then there's a lot of unknowns that we don't know. And I think that's why, and I will say this, I think, at least for me, and Yancy can speak of this, I think the industry, that would be the recruiting industry, regardless of what outlet you go to, has done a very, very good job of player evaluation. It's gotten much better. We know not only with recruiting for high school guys, we know transfer guys. Yes, there's going to be always misses. There's going to be, guys that we think should be really, really good or project to be really good, but then they don't pan out. I mean, you look at DJ Uiagalelei last year, who played really well at at Oregon State.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, did not work out at Florida State. So there's going to be some of that. But, I think we know kind of who these rosters are, what these rosters are. It's just now, how do these teams gel together? How do these coaches put that chemistry together to go 12, 13 Saturdays and try to make a run at this thing?
Yeah. Yancy?
Yeah, I know that Ole Miss reported, I believe about 2 weeks ago, everybody reported back at the end of May, and they had 100% from their roster that showed up. No academic casualties as far as signees or current players. And so, as far as what's on your roster, that's pretty solidified. And I do like the portal now, where you only have a window to get into the portal for a certain amount of time during the spring. So you can get some stability for your roster. Not speaking about Ole Miss, but all the schools. I think that's healthy for all programs. There's still probably a few players out there that still have not signed with schools that you could see added on in the summer. I'm sure that schools will still be evaluating their rosters and saying, I need a position at X, and try to see what's out there. But I think we pretty much know 99.9% of who we got on all these rosters right now.
Yeah. And again, that being said, the coaching out there, developing players, it's everything on the offensive line. I'll throw this one to you, Jake. Quality of play in the offensive line, in the trenches, in the SEC, top to bottom, on a 1 to 5, 1 being abysmal, 5 being elite. What do you think it is? Give me a number.
If we're going, across the country, conference, I would say it's a 4. I mean, I think it's a 3.5 or 4. I mean, here's the deal. I think the Big Ten has been better. If you look at the Big Ten over the last 2 years specifically, and you look at the two things, you look at Michigan, you also look at Ohio State, the last 2 national champions. They were very, very good along the offensive front, and they were superior to the teams that they played. I mean, when you look at the way Michigan was able to block Alabama, and then, of course, win their national championship the next week, you look at Ohio State, the way they were able to take care of offensive line play in the Big Ten, I think is better. But I think, for the most part, the SEC is a good, 3.5 to 4 out of 5.
Okay, because you talk about 25 maybe elite offensive linemen. I say elite, but really good that everybody in the country is going after. But hell, everybody, you need to sign, every school in the country needs to sign 10 linemen a year. Ideally, it'd be 5 offensive and 5 defensive. But you look at schools that didn't do that, and it really bites you. Yancy, I don't see you, and I know you're out there, and I want your take on offensive line play. 1 being abysmal, 5 being the best. Jake gave it a 3.5 to a 4.0. Sounds like my GPA in my dreams.
Are you able to hear me clearly?
Yeah, we got you now. We see you. We see you now live from the Taylor Grocery.
I think what you're seeing is this. Offensive line has not been nearly as effective anywhere in the country. You even look at Ohio State; they had major struggles throughout the season on the offensive line. That's the reason they were not nearly as dominant as they were in the playoffs. It wasn't until the playoffs started that they got that offensive line gelling. The reason this is taking place is because you have a budget for your roster, and how much money do you want to put on it for dead weight? By that, I mean money that is not being used to players that are producing on the field. We all know that offensive line takes the longest to develop. Do you want to spend money on a player for 3 to 4 years before they really become a productive player for you? How much money do you have in your budget to spend on players that are not going to contribute on the field? So what is happening now is that you're not seeing the big money being budgeted for the offensive line as you're seeing for the other positions out of high school, because they don't want to spend a bunch of money on players that aren't going to be playing. So
Yeah.
now they're waiting for the portal to get those players that have proven that they can be productive at that time. And so it's really, if there's been one position that has been hurt the most by the NIL and the transfer portal era, it has been the offensive line, because it's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and you're right. The guys that are not producing are non-revenue producing assets. It's like if you're in commercial real estate and you've got a strip mall with 10 offices and none of them are occupied, that is a problem. Jake, next position I'm going to ask you about is defensive line. Quality of play in the trenches. Again, everybody says it's an LOS league, line of scrimmage league in the SEC. Where do you rank that on a 1 to 5 in the SEC, top to bottom? And it could be an average, and there are going to be some programs obviously better than others, like Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, 3.5 to 4. I mean, you look at the higher end, defensive lines, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, what Ole Miss had last year.
Yes.
But then, I don't think, because of the transfer portal and because of the depth that's out there, the lack of depth, I mean, that Georgia hasn't been able to build like they had previously to 2021, Alabama and others, that a lot of these players are going elsewhere. So, you're seeing better defensive line play at Oregon. You're seeing better defensive line play at Michigan. You've seen better defensive line play at Penn State. So, I think the old adage of, the SEC is known for defense. Yes, there's more talent in the SEC still than anywhere in the country. But I think defensively, there is some holes in some of these teams, primarily due to the transfer portal. But I still think it's a very, very good league defensive line play.
All right. Interesting who watches this show. I'm at Chinatown Restaurant in Marion, Arkansas last night, picking up some dinner on the way home from Memphis. Guy comes out and I said, "Hey, is the food here good?" And he goes, "Well, hold on." He goes, "I almost ran into the back of your truck. Saw that Auburn tag on there." He goes, "I'm a Georgia fan." So I want to say hello to Andre. He's watching this show now. Never know where we pick up audience members. I just wanted to get that in. That's interesting. Y'all both a 3.5 to a 4.0 on the line play in the line of scrimmage. Next question. We got a few more minutes before we go. Running back play in this league, quality of the running backs compared to quality and depth of wide receiver rooms. I'll throw that to you, Yancy, first, and then Jake, and then we'll have to wrap it up.
Well, I differ a little bit with Jake on the defensive line. I think the SEC is the best in the country as far as on the defensive line. Where is it overall quality compared to the pre-portal transfer era? I'm not sure, but I'd give it a 5 on a 5 scale of 5 for the defensive line, again, because defensive linemen, they can contribute in year one. In year two, they don't take as long to develop. So you're seeing the SEC teams spend more money on the defensive line than you are the offensive line. As far as running backs and where they compare to the wide receivers, it does seem like that there's just more receivers, right? Everywhere. We saw what a lack of running back will do to a program that has just about everything, as Ole Miss did last year. So you don't have a big time running back, you got problems.
Jake, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, and I agree with Yancy on this. Wide receiver room's much more important just because of the way we throw the football, but you still have to have the importance of the running game.
Yeah.
And that comes down to high school football. That comes down to the National Football League. You look at what Saquon Barkley was able to do for Philadelphia last year. You still have to be able to run the football, and coaches will tell you that. I mean, when you get down into 3rd and 2, you get down into 3rd and 3, you get down inside the red zone. I mean, you've got to be able to run the football. So while the receiver rooms probably have more punch and they have more talent. It doesn't matter how you do it. If you do it through a platoon system, running back wise, or you have two dudes that, kind of like Ohio State did last year, what Penn State has this year, Notre Dame has this year, what Ole Miss may have this year. You still have to be able to run the football at opportune times. And that only shows its head, and people only worry about the running game when it's time to worry about it. Meaning you get down to 3rd and 2 and then you need it. You're throwing the ball over the field. You need 3rd and 2 and you can't move the chains. Then it becomes ultimately, important again.
Yeah. I mean, running game, offensive line, dominant play. It's not something you decide Friday night in the team meeting at the hotel. Okay, we're going to get tough tomorrow. It's a state of mind. It's just a culture. But look, thank you, both of you. Yancy Porter, catch him Monday night, Sports 56 WHBQ, Rebel Yell Hotline, Chuck Rounsville, Harry Harrison, Gary Darby. Gordon Ford, talked to Gordon last week. Love that guy. All over Super Talk Mississippi. And, of course, Jake Wimberly, ESPN 105.9, The Afternoon Drive, Monday through Friday in the bold new city, the capital, Jackson, 3 to 6 p.m. And both of y'all give out your Twitter handles, and I'll let you go. But first off, thank you more than you know for sharing your time with us. And Jake, stay on anytime you want to come on like this. Yancy, you know the deal. We just have a great party here, and we could be sitting on the front porch of the Taylor Grocery or anywhere in the South talking college football, and I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, I'll get out of here first because I've got to catch a meeting. Yancy, great to see you. You can find me on X at Jake Wim. Of course, we'll be on 3 to 6 today. Talking a lot of football, getting ready for high school football, just a lot of football today. And, of course, that'll be that way until February.
All right. Thanks, Jake. We'll do it again next week. All right.
Good seeing you, Jake.
And, Yancy, how do they follow you when you're not at the Tallahatchie Grill or with your great Oxford magazine?
Yes. Just at Yancy Porter. It's very simple. I keep it very
easy. Even Jethro can understand it. Thank you, man. We'll do it again next week.
Thank you, guys. Everybody have a blessed day
as well. Hey, let me say something when we wrap it up here, man. Again, thank you to all of you watching this show, sharing the show, typing in your comments. That's what we're here for. We're here to serve. I put out the best 60 minutes on the SEC every day, and come to this channel. We'll be back on tonight. Our sponsors, Winter Timber Outdoors, man. They're coming to a town near you. 13,000 square foot store under construction in Auburn. Everything you need, hunting and fishing, head to toe, all the gear, all the clothes. All you deer hunters, duck hunters, now's the time to be getting your food plots ready. You got to do it. They'll get you fixed up. Winter Timber Outdoors, Athens, Alabama. Landers Ford, Poplar and Houston Levy, where Germantown and Collierville meet. LandersFordMemphis.com. They are the #1 Ford dealership in the Mid-South for a lot of reasons, starting with General Manager Brad Bellamy. Cars, trucks, SUVs, new, used, service department open every day of the week except Sunday, 7 a.m., 7 p.m. Let them know you heard about them on Sidelines. And I was in Hewlett and Dunn yesterday. They got so much cool stuff in there, and the power went out while I was there. Transformer blew. They were still able to conduct business with people there in Hewlett and Dunn. Order you one of those good-looking trucker caps. They've got them. Charles Hall, J.M. Huffman, Raven, Lydia, Squidward, everybody open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m., 6 p.m. Look, the best selection of boots you'll find anywhere, okay? So, hey, Mother Teresa's right. We can't do everything, but we can all do something. Think about people when you pass them, coming and going every day in life. Help people out, man. You'll be richer for it. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Act like you've been there. Tonight, the Lowdown with Lauren Meadows, with Brenden, and I'll be on there as well on this channel. Stay tuned to this channel because we're putting out content updated every single day. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tonight and tomorrow.